Welcome back. You're watching France 24. Coming up, U.S. President Donald Trump promises a phenomenal post-Brexit trade deal. During a state visit to London, the leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, addresses a nearby rally to protest his visit. Protesters in Sudan call for fresh sit-ins and an inquiry into Monday's crackdown that's left 35 dead. The standoff over the handover of power to civilians coming to a head. 48 extra hours to file taxes online after the French government's website crashes. Victims says the budget minister of a sunny 3-day weekend that had too many putting off filing to the last minute. After the news, the France 24 debate, what is left of Tiananmen? 30 years after the crackdown that ended calls for more freedom and 5 weeks of what some have dubbed the Chinese Spring. Many don't even know about the anniversary there. How did the West get it so wrong in believing that an opening up of the economy would inevitably lead to a political opening? Your thoughts, your questions on Facebook and Twitter. #F24debate. Down to business on day 2 of Donald Trump's 3-day state visit to the UK. After visiting with the Queen, this time the US president was with the Prime Minister. Trump gracious to his host Theresa May, who steps down this coming Friday. Last year when the Prime Minister hosted him, Trump famously embarrassed May by praising her Conservative Party rival Boris Johnson. After a high-powered meeting with CEOs, he even urged the PM to stick around to complete a US-UK trade deal.
The partnership between the U.S. and the U.K. under Theresa May and Donald Trump has come full circle in a sense. Theresa May was the first foreign leader to meet Donald Trump after he took office, and the U.S. president was her last state visit before she steps down as head of the Tory party on June 7th. The two allies used the occasion to affirm their commitment to what they called the greatest alliance in the world, and even to strengthening it post-Brexit.
The United States is committed to a phenomenal trade deal between the U.S. and the U.K. There is tremendous potential in that trade deal. I say probably 2 and even 3 times of what we're doing right now.
Theresa May, however, did not shy away from addressing some of their disagreements, including the Iran nuclear deal and the Paris Climate Agreement. Breaking with some of his past criticisms of the British Prime Minister, President Trump only glossed over some of the more sensitive matters in the partnership, including Huawei and Brexit, for which he even praised Theresa May's work. The British Prime Minister took the opportunity to again defend her divorce deal.
I believe there is a good deal on the table. Obviously, it will be for whoever succeeds me as Prime Minister to take this issue forward. What is paramount, I believe, is delivering on Brexit for the British people. And I seem to remember the President suggested that I sued the European Union, which we didn't do. We went into negotiations and we came out with a good deal.
Still, Donald Trump has not wasted any time in terms of expressing his preference for the next British premier. Earlier Tuesday, President Trump had a phone call with Boris Johnson, favored to succeed Theresa May. The U.S. president later reiterated that he thought Johnson would make a, quote, very good prime minister.
Sudan's main opposition group is calling for an international inquiry into the killing of 35 Monday, the military dispersing the long-running sit-in outside army headquarters. The protesters also calling for fresh rallies to press for a handover of power to civilians. More on the day after with Selena Sykes.
Outside in defiance after a day of bloodshed. Thousands of opposition supporters hold prayers for Eid and for the dozens killed in a violent crackdown of the sit-in outside army headquarters in Khartoum on Monday.
It's a great tragedy that instead of celebrating Eid, we are burying our martyrs. There are people lying in hospital beds. What is all this for? For titles? For positions? For money? What is all this for? We want to know.
The official date for the start of Eid in Sudan is Wednesday, but protest leaders declared Tuesday as the end of Ramadan, urging people to hold prayers and demonstrate peacefully as part of a campaign of civil disobedience, after the military scrapped their agreed plan of a 3-year transition to civilian rule and called for snap elections, a move rejected by the opposition.
What kind of elections is this army capable of holding? What legitimacy does it have? The army, backed by regional powers that are not interested in any civilian government in Sudan, will install a government of their own. They can call it civilian. It has absolutely no legitimacy. What has happened last night is a complete coup.
The Transitional Military Council, which has governed Sudan since ousting President Omar al-Bashir in April, is facing increasing international condemnation for the violent attack on protesters in the capital, with the UN calling for an independent investigation. Activists say the assault appeared to be a coordinated move, with security forces overrunning similar sit-ins in other cities. Before Monday's crackdown, the opposition's disagreement with the military revolved around who would be in charge of presiding the transition to a new government, the military or civilians. Now, with dozens dead, the way forward for the country seems more uncertain than ever.
Franco-Canadian commemorations of the fierce fighting at Falaise in Normandy, kicking off 3 days of commemorations for the 75th anniversary of D-Day, the Allied landing that opened the Western Front in the fight against the Nazis. In part 2 of our look back, Operation Overlord, explained in a story read by Valérie Decamp.
Wherever I looked, there were boats, stretching from the coast to the horizon. This is how a British soldier described landing on the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944. The mastermind behind the operation, Dwight D. Eisenhower. The American general had 150,000 soldiers and 7,000 ships under his command. All had a clear mission. With the entire coast occupied by German soldiers, the first objective of Operation Overlord was to secure a landing zone to allow some 4 million troops to safely cross the channel. Allied troops first pretended to land in Calais, a decoy to draw the Germans' attention away from their real objectives. American soldiers were to land on beaches codenamed Utah and Omaha, the British on Gold and Sword, and the Canadians on Juno. At midnight, paratroopers were deployed behind enemy lines, another diversion to cause more confusion in the Nazi ranks. 6 hours later, the first American troops landed on Utah. At Omaha Beach, the landing backfired. German troops were waiting with heavy artillery and opened fire on the Americans, inflicting heavy losses. On Gold, the landing was a success, while on Juno, rough waters and unexpectedly heavy resistance by German troops inflicted more casualties. On Sword Beach, British soldiers managed to land, but their advance towards the city of Caen was halted by a German counterattack. Widely regarded as the offensive that changed the tide of the war, Operation Overlord was supposed to be over in 3 weeks, but ended up lasting 3 months.
Sign of the times. It's tax day in France for those filing online, and guess what? The government's website crashed, inundated by users rushing to beat the deadline. Now, the good news, citizens now have an extra 48 hours until Thursday midnight to file. The budget minister puts the rush down to a warm bank holiday weekend that meant that many, left it late.
I tried several times, and every time it wouldn't let me. I tried all my logins, and nothing.
You can't stop people from declaring online and then not be able to do it in person.
There were around 3 million connections in half an hour yesterday evening, and the website protected itself in order to avoid a data leak. You never know. Hacking is always possible.
All right. Still have to file, though. Thursday midnight's the new deadline. More news coming up. It's time now for the France 24 debate.